Hey guys, my name's Adel Vasquez, and today I want to talk to you about a problem that's plaguing locals in Alaska. And now, this problem is called the Pebble Mine controversy. And what it is in Bristol Bay, Alaska, which is an area in southwest Alaska, there is a proposition to build a mine that mines gold ore and copper ore and silver ore out of the local area. The biggest controversy in this area is that Bristol Bay is home to a large population of king's head salmon, which is a rare species of salmon that is largely used commercially. It's also home to the world's largest natural salmon run, and that in itself should be enough to raise alarms as to why this particular mine should not be built. Now, when researching this project, there were three main topics I tried to hit on and focus on to round my argument as to why this should not be built. Now, one is that the mine has a very horrific effect on the environment, to say the least. The mine itself would be taking about 600 kilometers of water out of this area, and 350 kilometers of that particular 600 are a direct salmon run. And so these salmon would not be able to return to their spawning grounds, would not spawn, and thus would die off. Now, the second area I tried to focus on was the economic impacts of the mine. And the third would be the cultural impacts that it has on the local Inuit peoples. Now, let's focus on that first point for a second, on the environment. Now, the EPA conducted a study, and it is probably the best technical information you could have out there. In this study, they ran scenarios and compiled statistics on what would happen if the mine were built. And after construction and after they take out the 350 kilometers of local waters, the mine would begin to build these ponds. And in these ponds, they would store tailings. Now, tailings are mine products that are unusable by the industry, which would be like the rock and the different ores that they're not mining for. Now, in this particular area, some of the tailings are ferrous cyanate and arsenic sulfate. These are very volatile ores, and as you can tell by the names, one has cyanide in it and one has arsenic in it. These are both poisons, and they would be storing them in ponds near the mine. Now, the EPA study focused on how there would be a possibility that these ponds would break and this would go flooding into the water system. Now, this actually happened in a mine in British Columbia, where a mine was mining and they had tailing ponds. They had 3 tailing ponds, and the dams broke on them, and now the water in this area is undrinkable for the next 6 to 7 years, which is the expected cleanup time to clean this particular ore. And if this pebble mine were to be built, the same tailings would be held in 8 ponds. Now, the mine in British Columbia only had 4 tailings ponds, and 3 of the dams broke for the 4 ponds. So, in increasing the number of ponds, you also increase the number of chances that you have a dam break. So out of 8, it's exponentially higher than the 4 that the other mine had. Now, to move forward, other than just the tailings, the mine would also be tearing the local environment to pieces. And in doing this, just the normal byproduct that they put out would be harmful to several microorganisms that are in the streams. These microorganisms are needed by the local fish populations, which salmon feed on. So in putting out their natural byproducts that aren't technically supposed to be harmful to the environment, they would be hurting the local fish populations and in turn the salmon when they return. Now let's move to the second point. Now the second point is on the economy. Now the mine touts that it will bring in about $5.6 billion worth of revenue for this area. But the salmon industry alone brings in $37.2 billion per year. Now, if this mine were to bring in $5.6 billion per year, take away what the mining company is going to use as, a operating cost, and take away the pay and the taxes that they would have to pay on all of the money they get, all the environment that they're messing up, they would roughly bring home $3.6 billion, and then move to the commercial salmon industry that would end up bringing home $24.2 billion. As you can see, it is not conducive to have a mine in this area that's only going to bring in $5.6 billion when the salmon industry by itself brings in $24 billion. $24 billion. The other big impact it would have is that most of the people in this area are Inuit tribesmen who base their line of work on fishing for these salmon. And that's how they bring in a large amount of their money. Now these men are not trained in mining. They're not trained in this kind of work. So if this were built, it would take the fishing jobs away from these men and give it to people who are not even in this area. They'll have to ship in people to work at this mine. And that would be probably the biggest concern economically, is that it's just not economically feasible to build this mine in this area. Now the third biggest concern I found was the local effect it would have on culture. Now, the Inuit culture is huge in this area. As I just said, they're largely Inuit tribesmen who fish in this area. And the effect that the mine would have on their culture is just devastating. This mine would rob them of their main food source during the summer months. Some families depend solely on the salmon to get them through the winter months. These families would be without a potential food source and would then have to resort to poaching the other game in the area that they can't kill legally because they can't have their main food source. Another big issue it would have on the culture is that these are largely family-knit cultures. They stick together and they have large groups of people. Now, what would happen is that they would not be able to make the money they were making and would have to break up and move about to find different work. Now, this is a problem because it's not conducive to the culture of these people. It's infringing upon their rights as humans to maintain a identity. And for those main three reasons, I feel that this mine is not a good project. It is an environmental justice issue. They are infringing upon the rights of the people and the environment in this area. As I was working through this research and came to that conclusion, I ran into several, issues with my sources. A lot of the sources are very opinionated, and so I had to search through those and just use them as a baseline. And much of the opinionated papers were that if this mine were built, it would create such a devastating environment and habitat around this area that no one would want to continue living there with it working. And so I leave you with this. If something is that detrimental, why should it even be considered as a potential outlet to make money? Thank you.